A police officer sat across from me at my own kitchen table and asked me how my 9-year-old grandson got a cigarette burn on his forearm. I want you to understand what that question does to a man. I'm 63 years old. I've never so much as raised my voice to that child. Eli is the only grandson I have, and since my son died, he is very close to the only family I have. And a detective was sitting in my kitchen in Wichita, Kansas, looking at me like I was the kind of man who would hold a lit cigarette against a little boy's arm, because that is what my daughter-in-law had told them, that Eli got hurt on a weekend visit with me, that she'd noticed I'd been rough with him lately, that she was afraid to leave him alone with me anymore. And Eli did have a burn on his arm, a real one, documented, photographed by the mother, shown to a doctor. I never touched that boy. I have never touched that boy, except to hug him, or catch him, or teach him to bait a hook. But I sat at that table, and I understood, cold all the way through, that it was her word against mine, and there was an injury on a child's body, and there is no accusation on this earth that sticks to a man faster or harder than that one. None. You are guilty the second it's spoken, and everybody looks at you different for the rest of your life, even if you're cleared, and I knew it. They didn't arrest me that first day, but within a week there was an investigation, and Eli was kept from me completely, and I was told not to contact him or his mother, and my name was in a report with the words child abuse next to it. And the whole time, the one thought pounding in my head wasn't even about me. It was, if they believe her, and they push me out, then that boy is alone in that house, with the person who actually did this. Because I knew who did it. I'd known for months. That's the whole reason this happened to me. What my daughter-in-law forgot, what she had never once thought about, is that I'd pay for the phone plan, hers, and the tablet in Eli's backpack. I've paid it every month since before my son died, and I set the whole thing up, and I never changed a thing about it. And that little boy, God bless him, had filmed the truth himself. If you're new here, stay with me, because this is the worst thing that ever happened to me, and the most important, and it does not end where you think. Drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and if you haven't subscribed, do it now, because you'll want to be here for what that boy did. My name is Warren Nash. I'm 63. I've lived in Wichita my whole life, and I was a plumber for 37 years. Ran my own little shop the last 20 of them. It's honest work. People don't call a plumber because things are going well. They call because something's broken, and they're a little bit desperate. And you fix it, and you leave their house better than you found it. I liked that. I liked being the guy who shows up when something's wrong. My wife passed 9 years ago, breast cancer, so it was just me and my son Matt for a long stretch. And then Matt grew up and married a girl named Lindsay, and they had Eli, and for a while, my life was as full as it had ever been. And then 2 years ago, Matt was killed. Car wreck, on Kellogg, on a Tuesday, some kid ran a light. 34 years old. My only child. I'm not going to try to describe that. There's no bottom to it, and I'm not going to make you sit in it with me. I'll just tell you that after Matt died, Eli became the most important thing in the world to me, because he was the last of my son that was left walking around on this earth, and he has Matt's laugh. And when that boy laughs, I get a piece of my son back for a second. Lindsay and I were fine, at first. She was grieving too. I helped where I could. I fixed things around her place. I took Eli every other weekend so she could breathe. I put a little money toward Eli when things got tight. There was a settlement coming from the wreck, money that would go into a trust for Eli, and Matt had named me as one of the people who'd help look after it until Eli grew up. I took that serious. I take everything about that boy serious. Then, about 8 months ago, Lindsay met a man named Colt, and Colt moved in fast. 2 months, and he was living there. I want to be careful and fair here, because I only know what I saw, but what I saw, I'm sure of. Colt was one of those men who is charming to your face, and something else entirely, the second the audience leaves. He didn't like me. He didn't like me being around, didn't like me taking Eli, didn't like that I had a say in Matt's boy's money. I could feel it coming off him. And Eli changed. That's the part that started keeping me up at night. My grandson, who used to come flying out the door when I pulled up, started coming out slow, started going quiet. He'd flinch if you moved too fast near him. He stopped talking about home. And one weekend he had bruises on his back that he said were from falling off the trampoline, except there was no trampoline. And I'd been a boy once, and I'd raised a boy, and I know the difference between a kid who fell and a kid who's covering for somebody. I didn't have proof. I had a bad, cold feeling, and a handful of things that each had an innocent explanation, if you wanted one. So I did what a lot of people do, and I'm not proud of it. I told myself to be careful, not to overreact, not to start a war with my dead son's widow over a feeling. Until the burn. If you've ever known in your gut that a child wasn't safe, and been afraid that nobody would believe you, type the word believe in the comments. I read every single one, and stay with me, because the thing that saved us both, that little boy filmed himself. Here's what actually happened, in order, and it happened fast, the way these things do. Eli came to me for a weekend in March, and he was quiet the whole time, and when he was helping me wash up after supper, his sleeve rode up and there was a healing burn on his forearm, small and round, and when I asked him about it as gentle as I could, he got scared, and said he did it on the stove, and asked me please not to tell his mom. He told me, please don't tell his mom, he told me. A 9-year-old. I didn't push him. I made a decision that night, sitting on the edge of his bed after he fell asleep, that I was done being careful. On Monday, I was going to call the child welfare people, DCF, here in Kansas, and I was going to tell them everything I'd seen over 8 months, and let people whose job it is come and look. I made one mistake. On Sunday, when I dropped Eli off, I told Lindsay. I thought I owed her that, one-on-one, before I called anybody. I stood on her porch, and I told her I was worried about Eli, that I'd seen the burn and the bruises, that I loved her, and I wasn't accusing her, but that something was wrong in that house, and I was going to ask for help. And I watched her face, and behind her, in the doorway, I saw Colt. 9 days later, there was a detective at my kitchen table, asking me how Eli got a cigarette burn on his arm. They got to the accusation before I got to the phone. That's the whole trick, and it's a smart one, and it nearly worked. Because the moment I was the accused, everything I'd seen became the desperate story of a guilty man deflecting. My call to DCF, if I made it now, was just me trying to cover myself. They flipped it. Overnight, the man raising the alarm became the man they were investigating, and the boy stayed right there in that house. I was not allowed to see Eli. I was not allowed to call. I sat in my house, 63 years old, and I have never in my life been that kind of scared, because it wasn't fear for me. It was knowing that boy was in there, and I was out here, and I'd made it worse by warning them. And then I remembered the phones. I set up our family's phone plan probably 6 years ago, back when Matt was alive. 4 lines, mine, Matt's, Lindsay's, and a tablet on the plan that I'd given Eli for his 7th birthday so he could video call me. After Matt died, I never changed any of it. I just kept paying it. Lindsay's phone, Eli's tablet, every month, on my account, because taking Matt's line off the plan felt like burying him again, and I couldn't do it. So I just left the whole thing running and paid the bill and never thought about it, which meant Eli's tablet and Lindsay's phone were both still backing up to an account that belonged to me. I logged in at my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, and I did not really know what I was looking for. I think I was just desperate to feel close to that boy. I opened the backup, and I went to the tablet, Eli's tablet, and I started going through what it had saved, and I found the videos he makes. If you know a 9-year-old, you know they film everything. Eli narrates. He does little tours of his Lego cities. He films the neighbor's cat. He makes shows where he's the host. Dozens of them, backing up to my account for 2 years, and I'd never once looked, because why would I? And there was one from that March weekend, at my house. 2 minutes and 40 seconds of Eli walking the camera, through the Lego city he'd built on my living room floor, with my old dog Biscuit wandering through it and knocking over a tower, and Eli laughing, that laugh, Matt's laugh, and at one point he turns the camera around on himself, and he's grinning, and he pushes his hair out of his face with both hands. Both arms, on camera, time-stamped. That Saturday, at my house, and there is no burn on his arm. The burn that his mother said he got at my house that weekend was not on his arm in a video that boy filmed of himself at my house that weekend. It showed up after he went home. I sat at that table and I cried, the way you cry when something breaks loose in your chest, because I finally had it. Not just the thing that cleared me, but the thing that proved the timeline, the thing that turned this whole thing around and pointed it where it belonged. But I knew a happy, uninjured video might not be enough on its own, because a lawyer could argue about dates. So I kept looking, and I went into Lindsay's backup. Before I tell you what was on that phone, hit subscribe if you haven't yet, because this is the part that brought my grandson home. Now, back to it. I want to be careful about what I say here, because some of it is Lindsay's private pain, and I'm not out to parade it. So I'll tell you the shape of it. Lindsay's phone had been backing up to my account too, and on it was the truth of that house. Not pictures of Eli getting hurt. I want to be clear, I didn't find that, and I thank God I didn't. What I found was text messages between Lindsay and Colt, and between Lindsay and her sister. I found Colt telling her what to say. I found the words of the accusation against me being built a few days before it was ever spoken to police, by a man who needed me gone before I made a phone call. I found Lindsay telling her sister months earlier that she was scared of Colt, that she didn't know how to get him to leave, that he'd taken over everything. I found enough to see the whole picture, which was this. Colt was hurting that boy, and Colt was controlling that woman, and when I became a threat to him, he used the oldest weapon there is. He made me the monster, so nobody would look at the real one. Lindsay wasn't the mastermind. I've had to sit with that for a year, and it's complicated, and I'm still not all the way through it. She's a grieving widow who let a dangerous man into her life and her home, and got swallowed by him, and when the moment came, she protected him instead of her son, and I do not fully know how to forgive that, and I'm not going to pretend to you that I do. But she wasn't the architect. She was drowning, and she grabbed the hand that was pushing her under. There's a version of her that's a victim too. There's another version that failed the one job that matters more than any other, which is protecting your child. Both of those are true, and I've stopped trying to make them into one thing. I took all of it, Eli's video, the timeline, the messages, to a criminal defense attorney named Rita Salas, and she looked at it, and she said, "Mr. Nash, this doesn't just get the case against you dropped. This is a child protection case, and you're holding the evidence for it." And then she made me do the hardest, most important thing, which was to take it to the right people, the right way. We went to the Wichita police, to a detective named Nia Coleman, who works cases involving kids, and we brought in DCF. And it turned out, and this is the part that saved months, that I was not the only one who'd raised a flag. Eli's teacher, a woman named Ms. Boone, had filed a concern with DCF back in January, long before any of this, because Eli had flinched in her classroom and gone quiet, and she'd done her job. There was already a record that the worry about that boy had nothing to do with me. Ms. Boone, when the investigator spoke to her, said something I'll carry the rest of my life. She said, "I want to be clear. We were never worried about the grandfather. The grandfather is the one Eli talks about, like he's safe. The grandfather is the one Eli talks about like he's safe. The case against me was closed, and a very different case opened. If you think this old plumber did what a grandfather is supposed to do, comment the word justice below. I want to know you're out there with me." They removed Eli from that house. That happened fast, once the picture was clear, and I will tell you, it is a terrible and a wonderful thing to watch at the same time. Terrible, for what it means had to be true. Wonderful, because that boy got out. Colt was charged in Sedgwick County with abuse of a child and aggravated battery, and some other counts on top. It went the way these go when a child is involved, and the evidence is solid. He fought it, and then he didn't, and he was convicted, and he was sentenced to 10 years, and he's serving it at the El Dorado Correctional Facility, which is about 30 minutes up the road from where Eli sleeps now. Because Eli sleeps at my house now, I was granted guardianship, 63 years old, a widower who lives alone, and the court looked at everything and decided that the safest place for that boy was with the grandfather he talks about like he's safe. So my son's boy lives with me, in the room I painted for him, with Biscuit, who has decided Eli is his now and sleeps on the end of his bed every night. Lindsay lost custody. She gets supervised visits. And here is where I've landed with her, and I've thought about it more than anything else in my life. I did not fight to keep her from Eli forever. I fought to keep Eli safe, and right now, those two things point the same direction, and Eli is with me. But Lindsay is his mother, and she was a good one before Colt, and she is in counseling now, and she is, from everything I can see, doing the hard work of understanding how she let this happen. If she gets all the way clear of that man, and stays clear, and keeps doing the work, then someday, slowly, with the court watching, that's a door I'll help hold open. For Eli. Not for her, and not because I've forgiven all of it, because I haven't. For Eli, because a boy should have his mother back if she can become someone safe to have. That's as honest as I can be. Now I have to raise a 9-year-old at 63, and I'll tell you, I'm tired in a way I forgot a body could be, and I have never been happier. We have a system. I make a bad breakfast, and he eats it anyway. I've learned which cabinet the good cereal goes in, and how to braid a friendship bracelet, poorly. He's in counseling too, and he's coming back to himself. Slow. The flinch going away a little more each month. He laughs more. That laugh. I get my son back a little every day. He asked me once, a few months in, why I never got mad at his mom's boyfriend and yelled at him. And I told him the truth. I said, because yelling doesn't fix a broken thing. You have to find the actual problem, and you have to have the right tool, and then you have to be patient. I've been telling him that his whole life about pipes. Turns out it's true about almost everything. So if there's one thing I want you to take out of all of this, it's this, and it's the most important thing I've ever said on here, so please hear it. If a child in your life suddenly goes quiet, if a kid who used to run to you starts coming to you slow, starts flinching, starts covering for people. Do not talk yourself out of it the way I almost did. Do not be careful. Children who are being hurt almost never say the words. They go quiet, and they flinch, and they make excuses about trampolines. That's the language. Learn it, and when you hear it, say something. To a teacher, to a doctor, to the child welfare people. You might be wrong. Being wrong costs you an awkward afternoon. Being right and staying quiet costs a child everything. And the other thing, the small strange thing that saved us. Know what you're paying for. I kept paying for a dead man's phone plan because I couldn't bear to cancel my son's line. And it turned out I was still paying for the phone in my grandson's backpack. And that boy filmed his own innocence without ever knowing he was doing it. My daughter-in-law told the police I hurt her son. She forgot I'd been quietly paying for the tablet in that boy's hands for 2 years. And that boy, without ever knowing it, without ever meaning to, saved them both, himself and me, with a 2-minute video of a Lego city and a dog and his own 2 arms, held up to the camera, grinning, on a Saturday, at Grandpa's house. If this story got to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And please, if there's a child in your life who has suddenly gone quiet and started flinching, look closer and say something to someone who can help. It is the one thing I will beg you to do. I read every reply. Thank you for sitting a while with an old plumber from Wichita. I'll see you in the next one.